The Dallas-Fort Worth community always says yes to supporting elementary students, and now that yes can win you a brand new 2022 truck. DFW Yes provides school supplies to more than 78,000 students across Texas. Give your yes today by purchasing raffle tickets in our Drive Away for Education truck raffle sponsored by Thomas J. Henry. The grand prize winner will choose from a new Ram, Chevrolet, GMC, Ford, or Nissan truck. Plus, you could win a shopping spree or gas card. Purchase your raffle ticket today at dfwyes.org.
And we are back. And I know I mentioned that we're jumping into the wide zone for the rest of the week, but got to talk to a guy whose offense hung up 77 last week. Coach Rhett Lashlee of SMU. Coach, how are you game planning this week to do that just every week?
Well, we're game planning exactly like we did last week, but unfortunately, none of those points are going to transfer over to Saturday. So, that was definitely a wild one last week.
Had you ever been a part of anything like that? I mean, even back to your high school days or something like that. I mean, it felt like y'all were playing horse.
Yeah, it felt like Tanner and Toon were like, you imagine if old school Jordan and Kobe went at it and they were just both on fire, just back and forth. I mean, I actually have, not as a coach. I mean, the closest I know, I played in a couple games that were shootouts in the 50s as a coach, but never really as a player. My sophomore year of high school in the quarterfinals, we won a game 70-64. And we got down 24-0, and then we started firing away. It was 51-35 at half, and I think I had 8 touchdown passes, 670 yards because we couldn't stop them
amazing.
either. So that's the closest thing I can say I've been to. Besides that, it was, but never where you have 12 real possessions and score 11 touchdowns. I've just never been a part of that.
You know how basketball players, when they're in the zone, they start saying that the rim starts looking like 8 feet wide? What did your play What did your play sheet look like? Was it
it didn't matter what was called. Tanner was going to make it right. It's like old school NBA Jam. I don't know if anybody knows that.
Oh yeah,
where he's heating up like we were on that from the jump, and it's fun. Obviously, offensively, when you get in those rhythms where you just feel like everything's clicking and the plan's working, and then when you call something that doesn't, the guys just make it right, and it's a little different when you're the head coach, though, and you've also got to stop them. And so, I don't know if I've ever scored 56 points and a half, much less gone into halftime, feeling like the game was very much not, still in doubt. So it was interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned it. How hard is it for the defense to play when everybody's scoring that fast? They're always on the field. It just feels like one of those games that once it starts, you just can't stop it.
Yeah, I mean, we went right down and scored. They went right down and scored. We went right down and scored, and they did. So at that point, you had a feeling like, it was a tough matchup for us. I mean, Toon's phenomenal and Dell and all those guys. We knew that was going to be tough in general. But we were clicking. You could tell they were. You knew it was going to be a shootout. I think you just kept thinking at some point there's going to be some stops, and fortunately for us, that didn't happen much. And then I think the biggest key was, we got 2 back-to-back turnovers that were critical in the second quarter that helped us create a 2-touchdown cushion. And then both teams went back to just, nobody break and serve. And that ended up being the difference.
Before we move on to this week's game, Tyler Levine had a big role in that game for y'all as a running back. What does he offer this offense that, maybe wasn't there that first half of the season?
Yeah. Well, it's been hard. I think our offensive line's played really well this year, and sometimes our running numbers don't say that, but we don't give up a lot of negative runs. But the running back position, we just had injury after injury. It's been hard to get any kind of consistency and any kind of rhythm with a back. And really, for the first time these last 2 weeks, Tyler's given us that, and played really well against Tulsa this week. He's given us just this physical, tough edge offensively. What's funny is the way we scored and the way we played. I mean, Tanner didn't even throw for 400 yards.
Right.
He threw 37 passes. We ran it 46 times. And I think Tyler had over 100 of his yards in the second half. And I think, the 3 turnovers to none, and then the fact that, we were able to run the ball for over 250 yards, that really probably was the difference in a game that was pretty back and forth. And Tyler's really given us some consistency there.
Now, I wanted to ask you about this because we hadn't talked about it since it happened, but you coached against Sonny Dykes and Gus Malzahn in back-to-back weeks, 2 guys that obviously mean a lot to you in your coaching career. what's the fun part of that? What's the non-fun part about, facing guys that you're so familiar with and respect so much?
Yeah, I mean, the fun part is getting to coach them, your team play in big games, against a rivalry game like TCU, who's, now fourth in the country, and no one's really played them any better than that. And then, UCF as well, who's leading our league. The negative is we lost both games. So that's all that really stands out to me.
Yeah, I mean, what's that week like? I mean, do you talk to those guys going into the week, or does it kind of go radio silence more than
Yeah,
phone?
you typically wouldn't talk to them. Sonny and I didn't talk. The only reason I talked to Gus is because they had the hurricane that week and our game got moved. Typically, no. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think, like all of us, right? You get a new job and you think you know what it's going to be, and sometimes there's just things that are surprising. And I'm curious, like as a first-year head coach, has there been a thing or two that has kind of popped up that maybe you didn't even think about, or that caught you off guard, or this takes more of my time than maybe I thought it would?
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty. If I sat and thought about it, I could give you a better answer. I mean, the one thing is it's just constant, every day you have a staff of 40 plus people and 120 players. I mean, there's stuff all the time, big and small. But there's not one thing, I think we've got a good staff and our kids have been resilient, and there's, we've handled everything that's come our way, whether it be a tough loss or injuries and all in between. And, I don't know if there's any one thing that stands out other than, it's just constant. And, the good thing for me, when the season starts, you just start focusing on ball. And there's a lot of other things that matter and that you could get distracted with and take your time to. And I've tried to just focus on what matters in this kind of 3-month window. And, fortunately, I think our team's playing pretty good football right now.
After a big win, after an exciting win, one that everybody's talking about, I'm sure all the kids heard about it on campus and everything like that. How do you go about as a coaching staff just turning the page and getting them to concentrate on a team that in South Florida that's been struggling?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think, on one hand, it's great for our program to play in a game like that. I know, we'd like to not give up that many points, but to get a win in the way we did and have your team and your players recognized nationally is great. We're playing good football. We've won 3 out of our last 4 games. We've had to rebound from a lot of different things this year and find a way to rally each week to come back and play. And our kids have done that every time. So I got confidence in that, but this is different. The funny thing about South Florida is they've got good players. They played Cincinnati to 4. They scored over 30 on Tulane. They were tight with Houston for 3 quarters. They were a field goal away from taking Florida to overtime at Florida. Like they've been in a lot of close games. They just haven't won any of them. And now they've got a coaching change. So there's just so much unknown there. It's a different, feel for us this week. We're feeling good that we've won, but at the same time, none of what we did Saturday transfers over. We can't transfer one offensive point to this week. We start at 0. We got to go earn everything. And defensively, we get to clear it, and none of that transfers over. And so how do we rebound? How do we go? We just tried to really tell them that we need to finally put our first 4 quarters of complete football together, offense, defense, special teams this week, because I still don't think we've done that. And so, that's our goal. That's our challenge. And, hopefully our guys will respond. I have no doubt they will because they have all year.
Last question. You kind of mentioned it. South Florida fired their head coach, Jeff Scott, earlier in the week. I have some familiarity with this just from covering the state. Charlotte fired their coach earlier in the season, then played Rice that week and just beat the brakes off of Rice in that week. So I'm curious, as a coach, how hard is it to prepare for a team when you're not really sure what's going to stay the same, what's going to change on Saturday?
It's really hard. I mean, to your point, I think the coaches that there's been midseason firings this year, the interim coaches have a winning record and they've won a lot the game right after. And, it just gives a freshness and a newness to that team, whoever they are. So I have no idea. I mean, for us defensively, it's similar because their OC is Travis Trickett. He's a really good football coach. He's still there. In terms of what they're going to do on defense, they let the defensive coordinator go. The head coach is gone. You really don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get something different than what you've seen. So it's almost the same but harder for the first game of the year, because you go into the first game of the year and there's a lot of unknown. You got to be able to adjust, but you have an idea usually because you know who the staff is. Well, in this case, we have no clue. And so we're going to have to start fast and play well early and be able to adjust to all the probably different things we're going to see from a schematic standpoint and the fact that they literally have nothing to lose. So, they may go for it every single time and run a bunch of trick plays. Like, you just don't know. So there's a lot of unknowns. It's unusual. It's unique. And we got to find a way to overcome it.
It's never good to get fired, but if you're a defensive coordinator, the week before you play a team that just scored 77 points seems like a decent time.
You guys.
To get out of there. Coach, we really appreciate the time as always. Safe travels the rest of the week and good preparation.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.